Hey, what's up, guys? Joker here. Welcome to episode 70 something. Which number escapes me? It's episode 70. Wendell. That's the episode number officially. Wendell is finally able to join us for TGW once again. You just recently launched your new site, right?
I'm all alone. Yeah, no, it's fine.
Oh wait,
It
I'm on the full screen again. Hang on. I'm gonna fix it. There we go. I did the same thing last week where I was like checking my colors before the show, so I was on full screen. But there you go. Now we're both on the screen. Now everyone can see both of us.
Yay! How's it going, everybody? Yes, we're at level1text.com or forum.level1.text. Forum.level1text.com if you want the forum. So it's exciting. It's sort of I don't really know what I'm doing because I'm on my own, but I have some ideas about things, so I'm not completely lost, and I think it's going well so far.
Yeah, it's going pretty well. I'm glad you were able to maintain and keep the old forum so that the lounge can stay alive.
Oh shit! Posting Central.
It's great, man. If you guys want to go check it out, there I got links down below to their channel, which is the old Tech Syndicate Hardware channel, now Level One Techs, and also the forums, which I'm quite active on. I'm usually over there. You can find me in the lounge quite a bit. So if you ever need to get a hold of me, just go over there and tag me in a post, and you'll find me.
Yep, we've just posted several new tutorials. Some of the forum members have. There's some really great Linux posts about Fedora 25 and Linux news. I'm getting the Linux content spooled up. A lot of fires to put out, rebranding, the whole nine yards. But there's a lot of really interesting stuff going on in the forums. A lot of activity, a lot of user contributions around, cool deals, everything from cool deals on the internet to how-tos. So it's pretty great.
So are you guys going to be keeping the Linux content separate on the other channels, or are you going to try to keep everything on Level 1 Techs?
I think we're still probably going to use the Linux channel because a lot of the Linux people don't really care about the latest and greatest hardware and the latest and greatest this, that, and the other. It's like I run Linux. I'm going to run out and buy the latest Kaby Lake laptop, and it's like, oh no, that's not a good idea. You probably should get a nice Skylake laptop that's well supported on Linux first. Now, desktop parts are a completely different story, but laptops. It's like no, 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 no. So I think that we've got some really interesting Linux content coming up that we're going to plug, and there are enough subscribers there that I think we could probably make it work.
Yeah, it seems to be. You guys seem to be off to a pretty good start so far. Got any? Usually we do tech pickups here at the start of the show. Do you have anything you wanted to show off? I'll let you go first, since you're the guest.
We don't have anything to store video on, so I've got to build a storage server. So we're building a 172 terabyte ZFS storage array. It's four 4U 24 drive serial attached SCSI enclosures, and then we're going to use a computer as a controller. But it's not just any computer. I'm going to sort of move my mic over there. It's an old Google search appliance. We're going to have an old Google search appliance as the controller. It's a dual 6-core with, I think, 192 gigabytes of RAM at this point, something like that. So, and NVMe, the NVMe SSDs, I tweeted a picture of it a while ago, but it's got 4 shelves, but I'm only going to turn on each shelf one at a time as we need them. So, initially it's going to be like 40 something gigabytes or 40 something terabytes or 60 something terabytes, 40 something terabytes, and then we'll just keep turning on each enclosure as we fill up, adding them to the storage pool. But all of the storage, 172 terabytes, will be there for when we need it. We're not going to produce that much. I don't know what I'm thinking. I just wanted to do it for fun.
So, what was the function of that very colorful system before you got it? What was
Search.
It?
That's if you called Google, if you were an enterprise and you called Google and was like, we want the Google search engine, but we don't want our stuff on the internet. You could buy one of those from Google, and it's your own personal Google search server.
Interesting. Very interesting.
And that's why it's fluorescent yellow. That's canary yellow.
It definitely does have a unique look. It'll stand out for sure. Is that just the monogel or the PC too, or is it like an all-in-one?
No, it's a 2U rack mount server, so it's based around the Dell. I think it's an R710 is what it's cloned off of. But Dell has a custom BIOS for it, or Google has a custom BIOS for it that I'll probably replace. The innards are pretty much standard, but the case is canary yellow, the front is custom, and then it's got a custom paint job and vinyl decals on the top for Google. But 18 RAM slots, so putting a ton of RAM in it, 12 cores total, 2.93 gigahertz. It's got 4 PCI Express expansion slots, 5 if you count the one that Drax in. So I can run 2 serial attached SCSI controllers for each bank of 2 external cabinets, a 10 gigabit Ethernet controller, and then up to 2 PCI Express NVMe drives, and then that'll completely kit the thing out. It'll be 2U, so there'll be 2 4U drive bays below it, the controller itself, and then 2 above it, and so that should be a ton of storage.
Nice, very nice. I'm looking to set up a network attached storage. That's going to be like my next project for my personal project, because right now I'm just kind of storing everything on mechanicals in my main system here, and I'm running out of space.
I'm not really sure what the parameters are going to be on it, but I think we'll be able to clear 2 gigabytes per second in terms of transfer speed. Although I'm not really sure exactly where we're going to be in terms of, the level of redundancy that we want and a whole bunch of other things. I mean, I could do mirrored VDEVs maybe, but I'll lose a bunch of space for redundancy. I don't know. We're going to play it by ear. We're going to do some tests too to make sure it's not slower than Christmas.
Yeah, that'd be good to see. You're going to be doing a video with that, or are you just going to be doing like a private thing?
No, I think that it will make a really good video. I think it'll make a really good video for the Linux channel. I'm not sure if I'll start with FreeNAS and show how to customize FreeNAS into a full FreeBSD installation, or if I'll just go with a straight FreeBSD or straight ZFS on Linux. I can tell you that it will be the ZFS file system, but beyond that, I don't know.
All right, cool. For me, pickup wise, I've got a monitor over there. We had talked about it a couple weeks ago. It's the new G-Sync from Acer. It's under $500, 1440p. It's 24-inch. It's pretty nice so far. And while continuing to turn to Acer, they sent me one of their 1070 laptops. It's got a GTX 1070 in there. Going to be doing a review with this pretty soon.
Nice.
It's really is gigantic. I kind of wish they had put a full-fledged Skylake processor in there. They've still got one of the HQs in here. Being that it's like, a monster size, like I really wish they did use the full-size desktop part. It's a little... I feel like it's being slowed down a little bit, like because it's only 2.6 gigahertz, like on Battlefield 1. I feel like it's limiting the GPU a little bit there, just because of the speed. So it'd be nice if they had a full-fledged Skylake processor in there, but I digress.
I really want to do a trash build with a surplus like i5 2400 and slam in like an RX 480 and just see how that does.
That'd be good to try. And then lastly, this is I posted this over on Twitter. It's just an update on the Glorious build that I'm working on. Finally got everything done today. In this picture, you're not seeing the RAM module because I had to actually go drive 40 minutes north to Edison and 40 minutes back to the Newegg warehouse to get I don't even have it near me. Thermal adhesive. I had to get some Arctic Silver thermal adhesive, like the epoxy you have to mix together, so that I could reattach the heat sinks. Because Wendell's got a big tube. Wendell's got a massive tube right there, a lifetime supply of thermal adhesive.
It's about a month supply around here.
About a month supply. So, yeah, I didn't have any handy, and I had to get the heat sinks back on because I was trying to put them on with a little bit of glue that was still there, and they were just falling off. And I was like, this is not working. I need some thermal adhesive, but. It's pretty much rocking now, ready to go, and should be getting a video up on the next couple days. But yeah, it's been a fun project. This is probably the most custom PC I've done so far. Usually I just kind of slap everything together, but this I've been painting stuff and got like custom pieces made for it. It's pretty slick looking.
Is that what all-in-one cooler was that?
That's the Deep Cool Captain 240EX.
That's the one. I thought that might be Deep Cool. It's the one that I saw at Computex. They didn't have one that we could play with, like in terms of thermals, but the other version of the Captain was really good. And they said that the newer version of that had even improved thermals because the pump was different or something.
Yeah, that's the EX ones. That's the little bit newer ones.
Neat.
Yeah, this is the second one I've used so far. They run really cool. I have one with a 360 millimeter rad on an FX 8320E, and that keeps that thing like around 20 degrees Celsius, even overclocked. It's really, really nice, and it lights up too. I don't know, it works. I feel like it works with the build. It's got like a pulsing like reactor kind of going on with it. I like it.
Neat.
Yep, very neat. Speaking of things that are not so neat. We had the election last night, and it actually brought down the immigration servers for Canada. It seemed right around the time, I think it was like around 10:30, 11, when people we had started to see that the battleground states were kind of starting to favor towards Trump. A lot of Americans were trying to get onto the Canadian immigration site to sort of find out, what they have to do in order to immigrate to Canada, and actually brought down the immigration website.
Yeah, this is. I don't want to touch anything political with a 10-foot pole, but I will say that if politics has gotten to the point where the people not on your side, you're afraid of what they might do, uh, something has gone very wrong somewhere because it's about if we're in a two party system, it's not supposed to be things that are this far apart. It's supposed to be things that are like this far apart. When somebody's so far beyond the pale, it's just something else went wrong somewhere, and I just don't even know.
Honestly, like, well, both sides I feel were like just it was really bad choices. I mean, it's like
Yeah, is this the best we could come up with? I mean, come on,
it.
America, come on.
Well, Bernie Sanders was the best we could have came up with, but we just kind of skipped over him. I know some people think he doesn't like understand economics or whatever, but given the choices that we were left with, I think we would have been better off.
Well, I think that I mean, Bernie's got his warts too, but can you fault him for being dishonest or
No.
there's a lot of things that you can't fault him for that seem like obviously not bad things about a character. This is true a little bit of you know, but at the same time, it's like is he ready to run the country? But it's like at the same time, is Trump ready to run the country? I don't know. I mean, honestly, it gives me hope because uh, if somebody who doesn't have any experience in government could possibly uh, be elected, then anybody could be elected. So we should, Joe the plumber could be elected, and that seems like a good thing.
Well, I heard this earlier today, and I kind of agree with it. Is that I think Trump's election is just a testament to how much Americans dislike Hillary Clinton that we're willing to elect Trump.
Did you see the leaked? There was one of the leaked Podesta emails that was like part of the DNC's official strategy was to try to help the Republicans campaign for candidates that they thought were, I'm going to paraphrase here,
Yeah.
crazy. And Donald Trump was in the middle of that list. It was like three people. It was like Ted Cruz and Donald Trump and somebody else. And Trump was in there. So apparently, the part of the DNC strategy was to help Trump campaign. It worked a little too well, DNC. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it seemed like they wanted to have someone that they could easily beat. That's what they were trying to gauge the Republican Party for to find someone that Hillary could beat easily.
Oops.
But I don't know. It seemed like a lot of her strategies didn't go well. It's like she, tried to like go to the right, and she shouldn't have gone to the right because it wasn't working. She's
You remember in the primaries, and this is the last thing I'll say on this because this is really funny. I think you remember in the primaries in certain states. If you vote in the primaries, you don't have to vote along the party lines that you're registered for. So if you're registered for the primaries, you can go vote in the primaries. And that helps determine who's going to be on the ballot come November. So the primaries would be like at the beginning of the year or well before November. And some places, Democrats were encouraged through media and social posts on the internet and stuff to vote for Trump in order to screw the Republicans. Oops.
Well, it didn't really work out at the end of the day. I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. Honestly, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe be some good come of this.
We were
But
we were all geared up to talk about what Trump means for technology, but we couldn't find anything where he's really said anything. I mean, it's just what he says depends on who he's talking to. So honestly, we'll just have to look at his actions rather than his words to try to determine what it means for technology. I don't think that anyone really knows.
and if history has proven anything with presidential elections, is that they almost never do what they say they're going to do up until they're elected anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
So and especially with Trump, where his opinions kind of change with the breeze and whoever's going to please at the moment, which is usually himself.
I'm still waiting for Obama's more transparency and more, less of the NSA spying on us and stuff, which was, what candidate Obama promised us before he got out of office.
It's gonna be an eventful 4 years if we survive them. Certainly. All right. So next up, this was a lot of controversial. Earlier this week, a lot of people had kind of come out like sort of like yelling at Nvidia about this. Gamers Nexus did a good job to sort of break everything down for everyone to show exactly what sort of information that Nvidia is collecting for themselves and for third party interests as well on user data. They're using telemetry essentially, which is sort of similar to what Microsoft was doing or is doing with Windows 10, right?
Telemetry, I hate that word because, whenever marketers have problems with what they're actually doing, they come up with a word for it. And this has been going on since time immemorial. I mean, George Carlin's got a really great skit about this, where it's like, you know, in World War One, it was like you were shell shocked, and it goes through this transition, and it's shell shocked. It's like, you know, it's just as short, it's to the point. It really, I mean, it conveys exactly what it is. And now shell shock is referred to as post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yep.
Good Lord, what a mouthful. And so telemetry, I think, is already starting the argument in the wrong place, because it is literally data collected from the end user that may or may not be personally identifiable, but taken in whole in context with other data is usually you can usually tie that data back to an individual. So Nvidia drivers are a piece of hardware, or the Geforce experience, depending on how pedantic you want to be, report on personally identifiable information collected on the computer back to Nvidia servers. And GamersNext has done a reasonable job breaking it down, at least.
I kind of saw this. I remember the first announcement. I can't remember. It was like, I think it was earlier this year, where they had talked about adding in where you had to log into the Geforce experience just to be able to get it and update your drivers through there and everything. And I could kind of see that this was going to be the way it was going to go. And sure enough, only I think it was about a month and a half after they started forcing us to log in, here it is now. They're collecting all of our data.
Well, I mean, if we really want to, like, the problem I have with this is, one, the encryption. There's no encryption. And so, like, if I put aside my gamer hat and I put aside my enthusiast hat and I wear purely my, you know, someone who works in the industry hat, dealing with any kind of information that may or may not be linked to an individual. Certainly this information is linked to an individual. Certainly if they're sending motherboard serial numbers or processor serial numbers, you know, in the CPU specifications and you know, the BIOS revision and motherboard specifications, if they're sending those serial numbers, then that can be tied to an individual. Handling that type of information without encryption for a company of Nvidia size is absolutely indefensible. You absolutely cannot defend collecting that kind of information without encryption. It is borderline for them to collect what games you're playing and what FPS that you were seeing. And I would like to see them transmit that information as scheduled intervals rather than a real time, like through Task Scheduler, just for those, but not any other personally identifiable information. But if you take the particular combination of your GPU and your motherboard and your monitor and, you know, other specifications for your system, it's pretty easy to imagine that that's fairly uniquely identifiable. You throw in a serial number or even like a MAC address off an Ethernet card, that's absolutely personally identifiable.
It's like a hardware based thumbprint. I mean, Origin uses something similar as a form of DRM. I know Battlefield 1 testing it. If they detect more than 5 hardware changes, they will lock you out of playing the game for 24 hours.
Yeah. See,
Doom did the same thing.
Stuff like that is it's unconscionable that you would be handling that kind of information without encryption. The second sin, I think, is in the EULA. So the EULA is very generic, and it is very, you know, a lawyer wrote it without really having any kind of concerns about what it meant to the users. I think that Nvidia would get a lot of community goodwill if they revised their EULA to be a plain language. We are not going to sell or even share information that is personally identifiable in the form of serial numbers and CPU serial numbers and MAC addresses and anything like that. But we will share information on how many people have what kind of graphics card and are getting what kind of FPS in games. So some types of telemetry for technical information to improve the drivers and for quality control, yes, okay, that's completely fine. That's completely reasonable. But any kind of other information where it's like, let's go get your Facebook cookies, see what you looked at on Facebook, because they have the opportunity to do that. No, that is completely just not an option. Not that I mean, from the you know, the Gamers Nexus article, it's not clear that they're doing that. But there's also a scheduled task that comes with the NVIDIA and some of the other stuff in telemetry. And so this article really, I think, should have been 5 or 10 times longer than it is. But the fact that they're not using encryption is bad. And the fact that the EULA has, you know, very broad terms in the EULA, regardless of whether or not they're actually doing it, the fact that the EULA would let them do that is not acceptable.
Yeah, certainly, I 100% agree with you. When you're dealing with personally identifiable information, you got to encrypt that kind of stuff. All right. Next up, more hardware. We got the Intel X299 chipset platform, along with the Skylake-X and Kaby-Lake-X processors, which is a change up in the naming scheme. These were usually the E series of processors. They're just changing it from an E to an X now. How exciting! But we're expecting to see the Skylake-X variants of these launching sometime in 2017, which will probably bring Intel's typical 1 to 2% IPC gains over the previous generation, which would be the Broadwell E.
So
Which
none. That's within margin of error. So no IPC gains.
No, basically, no IPC. All the gains will basically be based off of the higher clock speeds out of the box, which is usually like 0.1 gigahertz. Woo!
Yeah.
So it's really only if it's the same thing like with Kaby Lake coming up. If you're on Skylake now, it's not worth upgrading. If you're on, probably Haswell E or above, it's not really worth upgrading unless you need DDR4 support. And you don't have it already with X99, then it's probably worth looking at.
It's harder and harder to justify upgrades for these kinds of things because the CPU for most things just doesn't matter anymore. And in some cases we're moving backwards. So I did testing on, like the garbage build E5, like dual E5 2670 Xeons from like 4 years ago versus Skylake versus, massive $1,000 plus 12 core Xeon. We didn't go to 10 cores. We went to 12 cores. We'll go even beyond the 10 core part because the Xeon part is good. The situation with that was that like the Adobe suite handles multiple CPUs, more than 4, really badly. Like I'd say awful. And it's really weird because I know a long time ago that worked fine. So I rolled back in the Creative Cloud to like the 2014 Q4 or 2015 Q1. And there's a checkbox in there that's like render multiple frames at once. So with that, the E5 2670 from 4 years ago ran like grease lightning. Otherwise, the Skylake 4-core at 4 gigahertz, with the 4.5 gigahertz overclock, it was untouchable. That Skylake i5 or the Skylake i7 running at 4.5 was faster than the 12-core Xeon running at 3.5.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's because
I had heard about that because I knew a bunch of people when we had started talking about the 2670 builds. A bunch of people went out and got them, and they were seeing limitations. Brian over at Bad C Tech, he was seeing limitations where he would try to render and it wasn't utilizing all the cores.
Yep.
On his Adobe renders.
Now and I wonder if it's because iMacs, because with the iMac, it's like you only get the Skylake 4-core, and you get the new Mac Pro and the trash can Mac Pro, and it's all GPU, and there's not a lot of CPU. You can get the 4 or the 6-core, and so Adobe's like, let's not go with multi-core. But the older versions actually could use multiple cores better than the new versions, and I find that very interesting.
Now, is that the case also on the newer Xeons as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
because I know Barnacles, he runs like a ridiculous amount of cores, and he does renders pretty fast. It seems like. Yeah.
So the trade-off that you want, that if you follow that all the way through to the logical conclusion, and this is important for our Kaby Lake conversation, which is why I bring it up. It's like, oh my God, he's rambling again. No, there's a point. There's a reason. The relationship between clock speed and core count is this. For most of those kinds of workloads that don't really parallelize super great, 5 megs of cache is equal to about 400 megahertz of clock speed. And so there's a 6-core Xeon. There's a 6-core Xeon part that's like 3.8 and it turbos. I think it either turbos up to 3.8 or it'll even turbo beyond that. And that 6-core part has more cache than the 3.7 gigahertz quad-core part. But it is like as if it's 4.2 gigahertz because of the extra cache for things that don't actually use all 6 cores. So you can actually go in the BIOS and say, no, don't use 2 of the cores, use 4 of the cores. And this is a really unusual situation. 9 times out of 10, you should not do it this way. And then you can rerun the benchmark, and it'll be like as if the CPU was clocked at 4.2 gigahertz for things that were only running on 4 cores. So if you're comparing 4 cores on a Skylake to 4 out of 6 cores on a Xeon, even though you don't have the clock speed, the extra cache results in a speed bump. And that improvements in cache and improvements in some of the little other subsystems is really the IPC gains that you're getting in Kaby Lake. It's not really they've done something dramatically different under the hood. It's just that they've made the cache a little bit faster, a little bit more efficient or something.
Yeah, that's what I was seeing with some of the numbers that were coming in already. It would seem like a lot of their gains they were seeing were just basically from the clock speed bump and not necessarily from IPC gains that they were getting on their own.
Yep.
Yeah, so it'll. I mean, and I think that these are probably not going to push any higher than what we saw on Skylake anyway. When talking about overclocks, I mean, I don't expect to see many of these going over 5 gigahertz. Do you think? I mean, going down to the smaller process, being a little bit more power efficient.
Yeah, it'll be great for laptops, laptops and portable machines. It's going to be awesome, which is where the market is going basically.
Well, yeah, that would be good. Actually, we'll bring it back to the laptop I showed before. If they can start getting these full size desktop processors, and they're just like they are with the GPUs now,
Hmm.
and able to run them that cool, like we saw with the Nvidia series with their node shrink, then that would be pretty damn good to see.
Yeah, the magic with this newer generations, honestly, is the external peripheral connectivity. And when you're buying a new machine, if it's not a desktop computer and you got Thunderbolt is the way that you want to go. You get at Computex, we saw like the Asus Transformer book with Thunderbolt, and external they had a 980 Ti externally, and 35 FPS in Doom, no problem on a tablet with a Skylake CPU. Holy crap!
I still haven't actually done anything with Thunderbolt. I don't know if I have anything with Thunderbolt. Does this thing have Thunderbolt?
We did the Razer Core, and that's Thunderbolt, and that actually works out really well. I never got a chance to try the Core with anything other than a Razer notebook, but I've heard that the Core is incompatible with the new Macs, though. Way to fumble that one, Apple.
Yep, this does have Thunderbolt.
I really, really want someone to get the dual boot the new Mac with an external GPU in the Razer Core. Somebody's going to do it. I've heard that it doesn't work, but somebody's going to do it.
I'd like to see it. All right, continuing on with Intel here, we've got the first pictures of the 200 series lineup of boards. These are going to be for the Kaby Lake lineup of processors, the Z270s and the H270s. I was actually thinking about doing a budget build with the H lineup here because with how high the clock speeds are out of the box, it might be worth doing a budget build. Looking at one of the H series motherboards on these, I think that would be a pretty fun build to do. But so we just got some boards here from what was it, BioStar?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they have BioStar here. So what type of increased connectivity are we going to be seeing on these? Probably more Type C is probably going to be on more of the lower end boards. You'll start to see stuff like that. Not really seeing anything else really of note on these.
Yeah, no, well, it's all about connectivity and other improvements. I mean,
Like you were just saying.
and just a drive to the middle of the road, a drive to smaller form factors. We did we looked at the ASRock Desk Mini 110, and so a lot of machines like that in business. I mean, that's a perfectly capable business machine. Put 16 gigs of RAM in that, an i5, 512 gigs of SSD. What else you need? I mean, if you need a GPU, fine, but you could get an external GPU for something like that if you really needed it. But in terms of like having a zillion different business class desktops or like an email, Facebook, word processing, office drone machine, it's perfect and it's tiny. There's not much that goes into a 6-inch cube.
Tiamer said in chat, he said those boards are ugly as fuck. Well, they are BioStar motherboards. I don't know what you expect. I mean, I mean, A for effort. I suppose the black one looks okay. That green one might look good if you're really going for a black and green build. I haven't seen one that aggressively black and green since like one of those Gigabyte boards they did a limited run on.
Well, they stopped doing UV reactive stuff because the UV prematurely ages the PCB and components. Oops.
Oh, really?
Turns out, if you want to fatigue, make the plastic brittle and the components sort of pull away from the circuit board, there's no better way to do it than to expose it to a bright UV light from now until the end of time.
I think some of these look good, except for the blue capacitors that just really stick out that are not blending in with the rest of the color scheme at all. All right, so we got some gaming news up, and then a couple hardware things to round out the episode before we get into Q&A. We're not into it yet. Don't worry, we still got quite a few left here. But this first one I found quite interesting is that Tom Clancy's division is adding in a DirectX 12 renderer support. Which when I first saw it, I was like rolling my eyes, like, oh, they're throwing on DX12 to another DX11 game. We're not going to see any performance improvements, but they are actually seeing a improvement on lower end older CPUs. About 20 FPS here. He was running on an FX 8350, and just switching over to DirectX 12, he saw a boost of about 20 FPS. So those are the types of performance gains you'd want to see on the lower end CPUs with DirectX 12 when it's actually done right. So I'll be interested to learn more about how Ubisoft is implementing that into the division, if it's not just like a wrapper like has been thrown on some games recently. But this seems to be like the DX12 may be optimized pretty well. I think this is live now in the whatever their version of the PTR is, like their beta build that you can get access on. But this will be interesting to test certainly once the DX12 becomes available to everyone.
Yeah, the DirectX 12 improvements in general all around have been really really impressive, and that's going to take better advantage of silicon from AMD's perspective. DirectX 12, have we seen any really significant gains in DirectX 12 from the Nvidia driver on the 10 series graphics cards?
I think on Gears of War 4 was really about it, and maybe I don't know. It's Shadow Warrior 2. I don't think that's not DirectX 12. Really, Gears of War 4 seems to be the main title that's optimized on DirectX 12 right now, because the engine was actually designed for it from the ground up. And then Doom with Vulkan, but that really took more advantage of AMD.
Yeah, I think AMD is going to benefit more from the DirectX 12 titles. You know where Vulkan has also shown up a lot lately is on mobile devices, on mobile games, because Vulkan translates into lower battery usage, which has been huge.
Robert Caldwell was asking about DX12 wrappers. Would you like to explain that?
So, it's kind of a generic term. A DirectX 12 wrapper is where you take something you have, like the Vulkan API or whatever, or some other vaguely similar API, and you write something that will translate from the DirectX 12 calls to the other systems, whether that's Vulkan or whether that's something else under the hood. I mean, you could theoretically probably even do it with the appropriate version of OpenGL. But it's I believe that DirectX 12 and a lot, but not all, of the facilities that are available in Vulkan will translate pretty completely. AMD had a really great presentation on this, and that presentation is not fresh in my mind, so that's probably not the best answer. But in general, when you write a wrapper for something, it is a light translation layer to go from one API to another. The two APIs being incompatible, but designed to accomplish the same thing. There is usually analogs for, like, draw a cube on the screen and shade a cube on the screen and render this texture and blah, blah, blah. So you just run through the API and you map API functions from one to the other. Generally, there's not a lot of programming involved with that. Like programming as you would traditionally think of it is just writing translation from A to B. Kind of a Rosetta Stone.
It's like a port, basically. It's like they're porting the engine over into DirectX 12, more or less.
Yep.
That's basically my understanding of it, which is why we see so many games. Some games actually will see losses when they switch over to DirectX 12, depending on how compatible the old engine is that was built on DX11 with DX12 draw calls and all that.
What's about optimization too? Because sometimes they've done unholy things to try to optimize under DirectX 11, and then those optimizations actually work against you when you try to make it work under DirectX 12.
Yeah, I saw like that in Battlefield 1. DirectX 12 runs worse across the board. It stayed more consistent with AMD, but still saw performance hit, and you would have to run through like the same level like 2 or 3 times to even get a successful benchmark run, because it would just be constantly trying to load in everything, because the memory allocation was just all off.
Yeah. On
the DirectX 12 side of things. Next up, Mass Effect Andromeda. I'm not sure if this is going to be DX12, but it's on Frostbite 3, so I'd be afraid that it would have the same problems as Battlefield 1, maybe, unless they spend more time optimizing this one. But I'm looking forward to Mass Effect Andromeda. We got some details about it. They're talking about a 4-player co-op multiplayer mode, which is very reminiscent of what they had in Mass Effect 3, which I had a lot of fun playing that. I would have liked to have seen them gone full 4-player co-op for the campaign, since you have the party system anyway. It seemed like it would be built perfectly for you to be able to hop in with friends if they wanted to join you in your party rather than AI.
That would be a lot of fun.
Have you played much of the Mass Effect franchise? Are you a fan?
I haven't. I never really got into it. I mean, it seemed really interesting, but I never really got into it.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to get into now unless you're okay dealing with some dated content. Like the first one, a lot of its mechanics are a little bit dated. The second and third ones are, I think, really good, but the first one had probably the best story, but the mechanics are really dated and hard to get a grasp of now, for me at least anyway. But speaking of Mass Effect Andromeda, they are talking about having destructible environments on the Frostbite 3 engine, so that sounds really cool. Hoping that this, is better optimized for the PC than some of the previous games. Like Mass Effect 3 had really bad textures, long load times, and it was capped at 60 FPS. So it's had issues in the past, but I think if they optimize this for Frostbite 3, it could be really good. I'm looking forward to this one coming out for sure. Looks pretty good so far. There was a cinematic trailer as well, which I'm not going to show you because I don't want to get this video taken down.
Well, the trick is to show multiple things from different companies, and then they have to fight with each other.
Yes, that's the Jim Sterling loophole.
Yeah.
Quite familiar with that.
Yeah, I did see the trailer for this, and I thought it looked like it was designed more for mass appeal than fans of the franchise, and so I think that might be. I sort of sensed a lukewarm reception among Mass Effect fans to the trailer, but maybe that's wrong.
That very well could be. I mean, that's the way a lot of games go nowadays, unfortunately, where they're trying to appeal to more people that aren't necessarily the core audience because they weren't happy with the sales numbers and they want to get those big numbers and they want to, I don't know. I just hope they, kind of keep Mass Effect, as strong a title as it is and not try to, like Assassin's Creed or Call of Duty-ize it and turn it into an annual franchise. That's just, I hate when they do that with stuff. All right. Speaking of, another sequel here, Metro, new Metro game. Did you play 2033 and Last Light? You play those?
I did. And they were very, very fun.
Yeah, I really love those games. They push the boundaries of graphics certainly, but the story, everything, the combat and everything, like the environments were really good. I love these games, and it looks like we're going to be seeing Metro 2035. We don't know exactly when yet, but they're saying it is not going to be in 2017 in all likelihood. So probably at some point after that, and it appears that this is going to take place where the novels left off because they're pretty much already sewn that up with the first two games. So this is going to be a whole new lineup of things. This is not going to be. I don't think this is based on any of the written material by the author at all.
It'll be interesting to see how this goes then.
Yeah.
Is this a game company trying to do original writing? Because that's probably not going to end well.
Yeah, that was one of the strongest things about the original games is that the writing was so good on the story side of things. And I don't know. It was like one of the best first-person shooter series I've played since Half-Life. The way everything was kind of tied together, and I like how it showed everything from the first-person perspective. It felt like you were really there in everything. So yeah, I'll be waiting for this game to come out, and hopefully it won't melt all of our PCs like the last two titles did when they came out.
Well, that was just because they weren't optimized. I thought that they were having a problem with the third one, but maybe it's okay.
The second one seemed better optimized compared to the first, certainly. The first one was really bad. Like, they had just had, thrown the Nvidia PhysX and all that, and it was awful. The remasters did a little bit better, though. Up next, we've got the Sega Genesis is actually officially back in production down in Brazil. So these are going to be selling for, what is it in real? I know it's $125. Where's the price? I saw it before. Oh yeah, there we go. 399 Brazilian real, which is roughly 125 in the US. So they're going to be making brand new Sega Mega Drives, or if you're from the United States, that's the Sega Genesis. The rest of the world calls it a Mega Drive, which personally I think is a way cooler name. I like that it's the original model too. I like that classic model. I want to get one of these. I was just in, I can't remember where I was, but I was in a store the other day and they had a classic Sega that came with like 30 games, but I wasn't sure how good the ports would be on it. It reminded me of the NES, the Mini that they just came out with, which I didn't pre-order, so I'm probably not ever going to get one. Sad face.
I can't remember. There's a really hilarious story, and it probably wasn't the Genesis, but maybe it was, I don't know. They had sold the moldings. Like, the moldings are like the machined aluminum that they use for like injecting the plastic into, and those cost a whole bunch of money to make, and then they run the plastic through it, and they make, once the metal is machined and everything's the way they want it, then it just costs pennies. But all the work goes into the metal. And I want to say that it was the Genesis, but maybe not, was sold to a company that made dental products, and they just modified the mold a little bit, and it was like some kind of like teeth cleaning apparatus, and so you could wander into your dentist, and there was like a Dreamcast or something, maybe not a Dreamcast, but a Genesis, whatever, that was hanging on the wall, and it was totally like a teeth cleaning thing, but it was molded in white plastic instead, so because they didn't want to have to make their own molds.
That's awesome. I've never heard of that. Well, this one's going to be coming with an SD card, so they're saying that'll make it a little bit easier for emulation, and is going to be coming with some games stocked on the SD card out of the box. Some of the ones that I'm remembering here, I remember Golden Axe 1 and 3 is on there. Those were great. Jewel Master, Kid Chameleon. Let's see, Shinobi 3, Sonic 3. No original Sonic, unfortunately. Altered Beast, great game. Some of these other ones I don't really recognize, but I had tons of time on the Sega Genesis. I know you're mainly a PC guy. Did you Sega at all back in the day?
No, I had an original Nintendo and a Super Nintendo, and that's literally it. I didn't have a Nintendo 64. I didn't have a GameCube. I did manage to get a Wii, and the Wii was kind of fun, but that's it. Not,
I played the Wii once at Christmas. We played Wii Tennis. It was like fun for a few minutes.
I went from Super Nintendo to PC Master Race, so
There you go. There's no reason to go back well, I'm trying to think of what was out back then. At that time, probably Duke Nukem 3D and Doom.
I'll even no. It was
Well,
Wolfenstein 3D.
that was it for me as well. That was pretty much what got me onto the PC. My dad brought home a ripped copy from work on a 3.5-inch floppy, or I think it was a few 3.5-inch floppies. I don't think it fit all on one. And we had just like that was it. That's everything we had was wares back then, just all pirated stuff. That was just the way it was.
I had to dial long distance into BBS. I had the shareware version, and I saved and scrimped and mailed cash off for the very first, like for because it was the shareware version of Wolfenstein, so you can play like the first level, the first world or whatever, and then you got more, and then you could you could mail the money and do stuff. And right about the time I actually bought Wolfenstein, Doom came out, and that was like forever to download over a modem. I mean, it just took ages and ages and ages. And then when I finally got it, it was like, oh my God, I've got to save up and buy it again. No, it took me forever to buy up the first one. No.
And thinking back now, how big was the entire game? Maybe like a couple dozen megabytes at most.
I think Wolfenstein was like 3 meg, and I think Doom was like 12. And yeah, it's just like, wow, 12 meg. Jesus, this is insane.
Downloading that over 28.8, if you even had that, if you were lucky enough.
No, it was my modem speed at that point was, I think, 9600 baud.
Wow. I remember our first modem was 28.8. I was very happy when we finally got that, but we got into it. We got our modem like really late. I remember like everyone was already running like AOL for a couple of years, and then I had to use AOL. It's like I didn't know like it was just like that was all there was to me at the time. I didn't even know Internet Explorer was a thing. Internet Explorer was the thing I used when AOL stopped working. or Netscape Navigator or something like that. I'd go to the library and like they would have Netscape Navigator. I was completely lost. How the times have changed.
Yay, AOL. No.
No.
There's still people that have AOL email addresses, and those people just need to move on. It's not a thing anymore.
Well, I'm on the current version of Netscape Navigator, otherwise known as Firefox. All right, so EVGA has launched a new lineup of G3 power supplies, continuing with... They've always done really good power supplies. They're basically the Superflower PSUs, but they've shrunk these down considerably, down to, 150 millimeters. So I don't think... I was asking before, I'm not sure what the size for SFX power supplies is, but I don't think these are small enough for that. But these are pretty darn tiny. And they're also talking about better efficiency as well. 90 plus rated on these.
Oh wow, yeah.
90 plus efficiency is really good. Their PSUs have always been really consistent with EVGA. And yeah, just solid all around. They get some of the best reviews over on Johnny Guru, which is like my go-to source for power supply reviews. I was disappointed they didn't. I don't think they're keeping the three row connectors. Remember the ones I was showing you on the other one, the G2L?
Oh yeah. There's 3 rows. Yeah.
Yeah. What does it have a name? I don't know what it's called.
I'm not sure what the name of that is either. Those are. I mean, I think Molex is the name of the company that makes the actual connectors and rates them, but the square configuration, like having a more specific name.
Well, they're really convenient. I'm using it in that Glorious build, and it's just so nice that other than the 24 pin for the motherboard, all the other connectors are universal. So when you grab a PCI connector, or if you grab your CPU connector or a Molex or a SATA, it doesn't matter where you plug it in. You just pop it in and it just goes right in. It's so much easier to use. And those are actually on the standard Superflower power supplies, but EVGA cut them out. My understanding is now to save cost, and then they brought them in on the G2Ls just because they were adding in the lighting effects. But I don't think that we're going to see those here on the G3 lineup, unfortunately. I would like to see that become a new standard because it's way nicer to use.
I've got to get an SFX power supply that will fit in the Lee, the computer that I made that has the Retina display. I need to get an SFX power supply that'll fit in there that can power a 12-core Xeon because I want to stuff a 12-core Xeon in that thing.
I have a. Do you think a 650 watt would do it?
That's within margin of error.
That's what I've got a 650 watt from that company. Which one is it? That makes the Raven case.
I don't even,
Silverstone.
I don't even know why I would. I mean, it's like I know a 1070 won't fit in there lengthwise, but I know that a 1060 would fit, and you get the 12 core Xeon and the ASRock X99 ITX motherboard, and then a power supply to power that, and a couple other things, and that would be one hell of a tiny computer with a built-in LCD.
Oh, is that like for your LAN build that you carry around?
Yeah, yeah.
Are you doing an updated version of that?
I was thinking about it. I mean, I don't have anywhere to go, but it's like I've got an X99 12 core Xeon, and it's like, oh, let's put it in there and see what happens.
Yeah, I've got some pictures that I had posted it on the forums on the lounge a while back, and I just posted, it was like just Wendell things. I was filming on my phone. I never did anything with this footage, but I still have it kicking around. We were looking through. There was a box of motherboards at the LAN, and we were just going through all of them. And I started recording because one of them actually stumped you.
Yes,
he was like someone's like, what is this? And he's like, I don't know. Let's Google it. I was just like.
It turns out that was the third CPU on that motherboard was for the bus interface, so that was interesting.
Yeah, it was. I still got quite a few pictures and video from that. I thought about doing something with it, but it's been too long now. But good times back in the past. All right, so YouTube, it looks like, is going to be adding support for HDR video, which I think is a good thing because, like they say here in the article on The Verge, this will hopefully maybe push, people needing HDR displays more. We still can't really get them at the desktop unless you look at like $5,000 OLED displays, which you can't even really find yet.
OLED is where it's at. OLEDs made with an inkjet printer is where it's at.
I need 4K 120 hertz OLED monitor. Like, they need to get on it. I need that in my life. I've seen one already around. I think it's like $5,000. Like I said,
it's also DisplayPort 1.3, and it needs more graphics horsepower than we currently have. But soon,
yes, next generation Titans, hopefully. But this would, conceivably work if you've got a smart TV with HDR, which I've got a couple of those kicking around, so you could watch it on YouTube streaming. I don't think the GH4 or the G7 does HDR, does it?
No. Well, you can do the output on the GH4. I don't think does 422 output on the HDMI, but I think the G7 might, and which is, I think it only records in 420. But most of the new Panasonics do 422 on the HDMI, so if you can use an external recorder, and that'll work pretty well. You could combine that with like a Cine-like profile and do the color grading after the fact, and that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I just got a dash cam that does HDR, so that's my only camera that does HDR right now is my dash cam, and I can't even watch it on anything unless I put it on a USB and then pop it into my television, and it's not really worth it. It's not really worth it. But yeah, it's a good thing that they are going to be bringing this to YouTube because I think them putting 4K on there has kind of pushed that to the forefront, maybe making 4K a little bit more relevant for people, even if it is just kind of giving you a little bit better bitrate after their compression side of things. But yeah, YouTube HDR. All right, last topic. I'll let you take this one. This is the AT&T lectures Google Fiber about the broadband investments, and you guys could start putting your questions in the chat also while we're going over this for the Q&A.
Oh yeah, this is just Q&A filler. I thought this story was really funny because AT&T actually took the time to bother coming out because Google has sort of scaled back, quote unquote, their fiber rollout, citing problems and things like that. And like in Louisville, Kentucky, they waged a political war against Google to erect as many obstructions as possible to make it hard for them to roll out infrastructure. Now, strictly speaking, there's not necessarily anything wrong with the way that infrastructure is done in America. Historically, this was all figured out in the 1950s and 60s and to a lesser extent the 70s. And what was figured out during that period of time is that it does make sense for the government to let one company have a limited local physical monopoly to roll out wired infrastructure to customers. Because if you get 2 or 3 or 10 competing companies rolling out physical infrastructure, nobody's going to be able to pay back the capital investment to do that, and nobody's going to have enough customers to actually make a profit, and so nobody will actually roll out the needed infrastructure for the citizenry unless they've got some guarantees that they're going to make some of their money back. And so it was decided that, okay, it's cool if like the town of Milpitas is can award a monopoly, a time limited monopoly to a specific company to roll out wired infrastructure. And so AT&T and other incumbent companies are saying Google should not roll out its competing services, which are superior, because they might, we have the monopoly. They're going to take money away from us. And there's some merit to that argument in the historical context. But the reality is that Google is willing to provide a better service than AT&T in a lot of cases. And so AT&T is fighting with them on legal grounds rather than meritorious grounds. And so AT&T took the time to basically gloat, to basically come out with a memo that's like, see, investing in infrastructure is hard and blah, blah, blah. And really what AT&T has done, from my perspective, is to just do a bunch of campaign contributions to make it a political problem rather than a technical problem. And that is a tragedy, and we should all point at it and understand that it is an abuse of the intent of the law that was created to award monopolies to companies, because AT&T is not intent on providing a service anywhere near as good as what Google would intend to offer. And that is a tragedy. And as citizens, we should be aware of it. And if you are in a position to ever do anything about it, you totally should.
Yeah, I 100% agree. It's basically just there on it's like a dinosaur on its last leg, just trying to hold on. It's like, come on, we want to keep that infrastructure so we can keep making more money off of it. But yeah, Google Fiber is probably going to be the way of the future, unless all these other companies, Comcast.
No, Comcast, no.
Maybe Verizon. Verizon, maybe.
No,
probably not. Google's the future.
It's crazy.
And then they'll own everything. Google scares me every day, man. Like I don't know. Every day it seems like Google knows more about me on my phone. It's like I walk into a restaurant. It's like, hey, you want to review this restaurant? Like, no.
How did you know? It's like,
I don't even know how they found this out because I don't put this anywhere. They found out what my favorite football team is, and they started giving me the scores. And I never reported. I don't put that on Facebook. I don't have it anywhere. But they all of a sudden know that I like the Raiders. And now the FBI knows because they're probably listening to this.
Google, you creepy.
They are creepy. They scare me, honestly. Someone wanted to know how much your Google computer cost buying you the server thing.
About $100, give or take, and that was with 48 gigs of RAM and E5630 2.4. It was the E56 whatever CPUs, the low power ones with that were 2.4 gigahertz. I swapped those out for the 2.93 X series, which have more cache.
Nice. Planet Vampire says he's rocking the crossover 32 4K that you reviewed a while back.
Yes.
I saw that. That did look really attractive. If I wasn't already using the A409U, which I got based off of your A399U review, because
Korean monitors, yay!
Hey man, that was a great review. Honestly, like I was like that, like put me over the edge for like 40-inch 4K. Like as soon I actually had ordered the A399U. Like I had it ordered, and then like 5 minutes later on the forum, for that thread that has like thousands of replies, they were like, "Oh, look, A409." And I was like, I was like, Dream Seller, can you please cancel this and send me a 409U instead? I don't want the tempered glass. I don't want to have to remove it.
That's
yeah,
funny.
the 409U is doing a good job though as a secondary display. It is. I could not do streams without it. It's massive. I just have everything here.
I think we've ended up with 3 or 4 of the A409s. We've got 2 A399s, and I just ordered 4 or 5 more of the 32 4K. The 32 4K is my favorite in terms of color accuracy and like the goodness of the panel response time. All of that stuff is great. The 399 and the 409 are not like, I mean, it's a B grade panel, but they're just so amazing.
Yeah, they're huge.
So, but the 32 4K I think is a much higher quality panel, but it's also smaller, so it's a little harder to read. And
I do not have that. I do not have that issue at 32 inches. 32 inches seems like the perfect sweet spot for me for using it for everyday use. The 40 inch is a bit much for me. That's why I use it as a second display, because I could just put everything there. I've got TeamSpeak, Discord, Skype, all my files and everything is open over there.
For me, it's about the PPI because I used 27-inch monitors for like forever, and I think that 27-inch PPI is around 110 pixels per inch, and the 40-inch is like 108, so it's a little less. But the 32-inch is like 125 or 130, and so like in a dual monitor configuration, it's hard for me to get as close as I need to the display. But with a 40-inch, I can set a little farther back, and it works. It works pretty well.
It is similar. When I drag like my File Explorer from my 1440 27-inch over to there, it almost stays about the same size of the box that it is on the 27-inch screen. It doesn't really change all that much.
Yeah.
It's very nice for that. What was it? Who said? How many questions? Do you have the chat up too? By chance?
I can bring it up.
Yeah, I'm just going through looking for questions here. If you guys got any questions, fire them into chat. I'm looking for questions. Is it possible to run M.2 SSD on X299 chipset for a bootable option?
It depends entirely on the BIOS of the motherboard. It is theoretically possible, but not a lot of manufacturers have supported it. You want to know something mind-blowing? UEFI support for the Intel NVMe exists on the Asus motherboard that I used in my garbage build. The E5 2670 boots off of NVMe. Holy shit.
Someone said you sound like Seth Rogen. I've never thought of it, but I kind of agree a little bit. You don't have the same laugh, but yeah, the voice is deep like Seth Rogen. I could see that.
No.
You might be a little smarter than him, just a little bit. Do you think hardware will be cheaper for the UK since Trump? I don't know, man. After last night, I saw like the global economy plummeting.
Bitcoin went up.
Did it?
Yeah.
I saw that there was a thing I was reading about the Great British Pound where they had been having their best week since post-Brexit, and then as soon as Trump got elected, it went back down again to where it was. It was like I was like, oh, they did have a nice little uptick, and then now it's down again. Shit.
What's the most user-friendly version of Linux, in my opinion? That's a tough one. Probably Mint with Cinnamon. Maybe Ubuntu. Maybe one of those. Fedora is not bad. It's not exactly for noobs, but if you're pretty savvy, you'd be all right, and you'd be a little bit closer to the pulse of something commercially useful that you would maybe encounter in the workplace.
All right, important technical question. Justin wants to know who could eat more M&Ms, you or me. I can tell you without a doubt it's Wendell because I had gastric sleeve about 1.5 years ago, so my stomach's about the size of a banana. So, Wendell.
M&Ms.
Are those still from the first episode, or have you been refilling?
So I game stream sometimes, and people send me M&Ms, and this is from like the second major shipment of M&Ms, and the first major shipment was like 25 pounds. Thanks, Cereal Straws. We got through that. We got through that 25 pounds of M&Ms. I have a lot of helpers helping me eat. It's not just me. Yeah. But we got through that 25 pounds. Seriously, 25 pounds of M&Ms.
I like your Reese's Cup martini glass too.
That just worked out. That was great.
Yeah, I just saw that. I was just like, oh man, that would be a great idea at a party or something. Just put those out.
Ryan came up with that. He was like, what would be really funny? A martini glass of M&Ms. And then we were all laughing about that, and then it was just silence. And then he's like, garnished with a Reese cup. And then we were just all on the floor.
It was good. What headset are you wearing? That's not from them. That's actually, I'm curious what headset you're wearing. G-Skill.
G-Skill, yeah.
Is that a new one, or have you had it for a while?
No, this is the one that I've had for a while. There's something up with the mic on it. The mic doesn't work, but
it's like a pinhole mic on the side.
Yeah, it's a USB. Well, it's retractable.
Oh, okay. It's one of the retractable ones.
But there's something up with it. But it's a USB headset, a 7.1. It actually works pretty well.
Nice. Let's see. Do you think that the next-gen AMD APUs and consoles will push Linux into becoming more of a lucrative option for console manufacturers in the near future?
Well, the console manufacturers are Sony and Microsoft. Microsoft's not going to put Linux on anything, so no. Sony has too much hubris to put Linux on anything, so no.
Recommend a 1440p 144 hertz monitor, no sync. I don't know what do you mean G-Sync or
FreeSync.
or FreeSync. For FreeSync, I would definitely recommend the Pixio PX277 that I reviewed a little while back. It's, I think, $399. It uses the same exact panel as the Acer XB270HU, which is like an $800 G-Sync monitor. And it uses the same body as a lot of the QNX 27-inch monitors, so they save a little bit money there, and you're getting it directly from them. But yeah, it performs as well as my $800 G-Sync monitor, but it's FreeSync instead, and it's still IPS, 1440p, 144 hertz, 4 millisecond response, which registered at about a little over 8 milliseconds in actual tests. Which is consistent with the Acers also, though. That's never
good.
never really what they put in the box.
It's good. Yep.
Yeah, it's very good, and you get it for $399. And they sell them on Amazon, so you don't have to go through eBay, even though eBay's fine, honestly. If you're getting from a good seller, like Dream Seller.
Yep. I've always had good luck with Dream Seller. We bought over the years.
He must love you.
We're talking like 5 years. North of 50 27-inch monitors, and probably 25, 40, like 32 to 40-inch monitors.
Nice. I was saying he must love you.
Yeah. A lot of monitors.
He's always got your videos on his sale pages.
Yeah. That was fortuitous. It was like, oh wait, why are you buying so many of these? And it's like, well, I've got an office, and that's just how that we roll.
Yeah. Let's see. Our newer RAID controller is more efficient than older ones. I have an Adaptec ASR 5405 and want to know if it's worth upgrade to 8405. The 5405 runs at 70 degrees Celsius all the time.
It needs you need better cooling in your case. It should not be 70 degrees C all the time. Those RAID cards are designed for the increased airflow of a rack mount server, which basically has a shitload of fans in the front. It's blowing a ton of air over everything. And in a regular desktop case, eventually this will cause the RAID controller to shit the bed. I believe this is what happened to the RAID controller that was in the server at Linus Tech Tips. I'd actually sent somebody an email that was, when I saw their build, it was like, this thing's probably going to overheat and die in fairly short order. Those RAID cards should not be 70 degrees C all the time. They're designed for a significant amount of airflow over them, like you would encounter in a rack mount case, not a desktop case.
Setup. Why haven't we seen high frequency FreeSync monitors, only G-Sync? I think we've seen high. Do you mean a high refresh rate? Is that what he means? Oh, like 165 hertz. I don't know if I've seen any of those.
I haven't seen any that high, but I think that anything past like 120 hertz starts to enter placebo territory, because
certainly
the LCD panel physically cannot respond that fast. Only OLED can respond that fast.
And honestly, if you look at some of the testing done on some of the websites out there that are testing monitors, like the 200 hertz Z35, the ultra wide, you actually start to see more ghosting introduced as you start to get over 144 hertz anyway. So you start to see some losses there. And your eyes, if you could tell the difference between 144 hertz and 200 hertz, then what planet are you from? I want to go.
Is there an open source Jarvis from Iron Man AI assistant that you can build upon? Can I make a video on that topic? Lucida. You want the Lucida AI. It's modular. It's extremely modular. It's got 5 major pieces: classification engine, speech recognition engine, fact base. You can download a copy of Wikipedia in a format that is easy to query with a natural language query. You can string all of that together, and all of the pieces exist. It's all open source. It's not super well documented. It's done by the University of Michigan, and I've met those guys, and they're really sharp and they know what they're doing. Jason Mars, and it's really, really amazing. And if you wanted to build something like Jarvis from Iron Man, you would probably start with Lucida. It's the farthest along project that I know of that's completely open source and completely everything, not depending on anything in the cloud.
Someone wanted to know if there's any customs tax buying Korean monitors from eBay. It depends on where you live. In the United States, I haven't had to pay any customs tax, but if you are like the UK, I do believe they have to pay an import tax. They have to pay VAT. So yeah, if you're living in one of those countries, you would have to check. But the US, I've not had to pay any additional charges, and I was actually pretty shocked with how fast my monitor got here from Korea.
like 5 days or less.
It was less than 24 hours. I from when he actually like it took a few days because we were switching it from the A399 to the A409, but once we got that set and he actually sent me the email with it shipping, it was here in less than 24 hours. Like I saw it it was like 8 hours later it was in Alaska, and then it was in Kentucky, and then it was in New Jersey, and I was like, oh my god, is this thing really going to be here today? And it was there that day, like the very next day from when it shipped. I was like, that's insane.
Yep. Turns out Americans order a lot of crap from Korea.
And that was
most of the time it's business to business, but
and that was free shipping. It was free shipping from Korea next day.
Yeah, that was when I was in Taipei for Computex, that was one of the most disappointing thing. Not really disappointing, but it's like you go in a shop and it's like Chai Mei, which I don't know, like that was what the brand that they were sold under in Taipei. Oh my god, those LCD panels looked amazing, 32-inch, 40-inch, 4K, and it was like $250 American dollars, and it's like, oh, I want to bring you home with me, but I don't have any way to get you home, but you've got to come home with me. This monitor's amazing. I just want like 8 of these, just monitor wall.
All right, I've got enough time for one more question, and then I got to get out of here. Someone wants to know if I'm going to be reviewing Zen when it comes out. Yes, I will certainly be reviewing Zen when it comes out. My thoughts are that it's probably going to compete with Kaby Lake, but I think what's going to be more interesting there is, what's the price point going to be? Is it going to be competing directly with Kaby Lake in the price point also? I'm more excited to see Zen than Kaby Lake, because I mean Kaby Lake is just a 1 to 2% IPC gain over the previous generation, whereas Zen is AMD's first really big processor lineup in quite a while. And after it comes out, I'm going to plan to do like CPU benchmarks as well, like I've done recently with the GPUs, like the 1060 versus the RX 480. I'm hoping to have a Kaby Lake i7 versus a Zen part that's comparable to that, and then do CPU benchmarks as well with Intel versus AMD. So that should be fun.
I'm really looking forward to Zen too. I don't know what AMD's got planned, but I have a feeling that Zen is going to be more targeted at. There's probably going to be a low cost Zen part. I mean, let's face it. But I think that the design is going to be more about lowering the price of the X99 or X299 equivalents.
Yeah, that's I would agree with that as well. They seem like they are targeting the professional market, at least with what they're showing already with render tests and things. So seeing what those launch at, especially when you're seeing the Intel 10-core parts at over $1,000, if they can compete with something like that and come in cheaper under $1,000, then yes, I will definitely want to use one of those. All right, but we're gonna go ahead and get out of here and wrap up the show. Thanks for joining us, Wendell, this week. If you guys,
no problem.
If you guys want to check them out, if you weren't here at the top of the episode, links are going to be down below to the Level 1 Tech forums. If you want to go register over there, you'll find me over there quite a bit in the lounge. Go subscribe to the YouTube channel where he's uploading videos now, the Old Tech Syndicate Hardware channel, which is now Level 1 Techs. That's where all of Wendell's new videos are going to be, so go check them out and subscribe.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome, and we'll see you guys next time.
See ya.
And now I got to find the stop streaming button, like always. It's in one of these windows. There it is.